Welcome to our second member development session, Cyber Incident Response. I hope everyone enjoyed the first session on risk management from Simon and Greg. The session will be run by Richard Head and John Moran. Richard is the principal of Headsure, who's the reinsurance broker for Unimutual on the cyber and pandemic protections. Richard has been around for a while, more than 30 years in the industry, specializing in the underwriting and broking of specialist financial lines, professional indemnity, management liability, and cyber insurance. John is the CEO and partner of a newly established legal advisory firm, Atmos. Atmos, with 4 offices across Australia and New Zealand, focusing on helping organizations get ready, respond to, and recover from cyber breaches. Atmos is a dedicated incident response service provider for Unimutual members under our cyber protection. We try to keep it as interactive as possible, so please don't hold back with any questions. And with that, I hand over to Richard.
Thanks, Tobias. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're feeling developed after your last session, and I hope you feel more developed after this one. So the topic is cyber incident response. Since the last conference, we have talked about this issue with members on webinars and on numerous occasions. In the last 12 months, we've had some cyber incidents affect members in the pool, and all of that has really just reinforced just how important this issue is. Being prepared, I guess, is the key message, or being cyber ready. What does that mean? What does that look like? And why is it so important to the things we're really talking about today? So have any of you got the pleasure of filling in the DCF every year for renewal, the data collection form for Unimutual? Anyone got that responsibility? Lucky you. So you'll be familiar with the section on cyber has a bunch of questions in it, all aimed at trying to understand your state of readiness or your state of your security posture. I just want to focus on 2 of those questions. First question is, do you have and have you regularly tested a business continuity plan? And the next question is, do you have and have you regularly tested a disaster recovery plan? Is cyber incident response is going to fit under which? Under which one is it likely to fit? Yeah, the cyber incident response part. Probably fits more naturally with the DRP rather than the BCP, okay? So what we're focusing on then, and that's why, and so, yep, why is Unimutual and the reinsurer AXA XL asking you this question? Anyone know? Yep. Well, yes, but really, the reason for any of these questions being asked on any other lines of business, for that matter, is trying to understand how well you're managing that risk, is essentially what it's getting at. So you'll be interested to know that last year at renewal, so for both of those questions, 56% of members answered yes to both or at least one of those questions. So 56% on the face of it have their act together in this area. Yep. So they not only have the plans, but they've regularly tested them. So 44% of respondents said that they didn't have either of those plans, yeah, or they couldn't answer, they answered it negatively. Of that 44%, half of them said couldn't answer the question because they hadn't tested the plans. So they had them, but they hadn't tested them, so they couldn't answer in the positive. Why do you think it's important to test these plans? Anyone like to have a guess?
Make sure that they work.
Yeah. So what happens when you test the plan, typically? What?
So basically you find out some gaps.
Yeah.
In terms of your processes, and you figure out a way to put a solution just in case that certain scenario or a similar scenario happens in the future.
Yeah, exactly right. So when you run one of these plans for the first time, you are inevitably going to find that it can be better. You're going to find issues and outcomes that you weren't expecting, and you take that, you feed it back into your plan, which increases the effectiveness of your plan when you need to use it, and increases your level of readiness. Okay, so the key message. So this issue around having these plans, it's about how ready you are, it's about being important. When it comes to the cyber incident response side of that, this is a really fundamental risk management issue. And it's something that needs to be addressed before you have an incident. If you only start thinking about these issues when you actually have an incident, you are instantly going to be in a world of pain. And it's not where you want to be. So key to what your incident response plan is going to be is which vendors, which experts are you going to call in to help you deal with the problem. Because the very nature of these incidents is that there's technical expertise that's required on the IT side, not to mention a plethora of legal, compliance, regulatory, communications. John's going to touch on all of this for you. There is just no way in the world that any organisation has all the necessary skill and expertise that's going to be needed to respond to one of these incidents. And something else I want to touch on, which is often overlooked, is how to think about how much of your internal resourcing is going to need to be diverted towards responding to the incident, and importantly, providing Unimutual and its reinsurer with the information that they are going to need to process the claim under the protection. They're not asking for that information for the heck of it. They cannot actually move forward until that information is provided. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I can tell you, not just cyber claims, but insurance claims in general often get bogged down on that issue. So very important to think about the resources you're going to need both externally and internally. So the good news is that if you are buying the Unimutual cyber protection, it comes with it is this U-Butte ready to roll cyber incident response service, which is it's essentially an AXA XL service, but it is manned by John Moran and his team at Clyde & Co, soon to be Atmos. John's going to tell you all about that. So that service is available to members who buy the protection 24/7, 365 days a year. You have an incident or you suspect you're having an incident, you call that number, you're on, you're ready, you're going, you're already dealing with your incident. That's all it takes. Yeah? As opposed to going down the other path where you choose to do what I call the Sinatra and you do your own thing, and I'll come back to that. But what are the benefits, before we do that, what are the benefits of using the cyber incident response service that is actually already in your cyber protection, no additional charge, it's all included? What are those benefits? Well, first of all of the vendors that sit on the panel are all pre-vetted, they're all pre-approved. They have the requisite expertise, they know what they're doing. You do not have to go through a process of getting that approval from the insurer to actually use them. Yep. The last thing you need when you're trying to deal with a time-critical cyber incident is having to go through all of that. Yep. Secondly, and importantly, all of the rates that are charged by these vendors have been pre-negotiated, and sometimes they are at a very significant discount to what you will get in the open market. And what all of that means is that one of the great benefits is just the sheer speed of response to the cyber incident. Again, coming back to this issue about providing information to insurers, is that these vendors are experienced in and they understand the information that insurers are going to need in order to process your claim. So that also talks to speed of response in terms of how the claim is actually going to be resolved a lot quicker. Contrast that with going the other way. If you want to put together your own cyber incident response team, you're not obliged to use the one under the protection, I'll make that point. But think about the amount of work and effort involved in going your own way on this. Yeah. Now that's all effort, time, expense that you're going to put into something which actually may never happen. And I hope it doesn't happen for you, as opposed to relying on what's already there for you in the protection without any additional cost or any work on your behalf. So they're your choices, but it's a choice that needs to be made and a decision already made before you have the incident and baked into your disaster recovery plan. So, one of the things that it's hard to overstate how important this issue is. Whether you're ready to deal with one of these incidents or not is going to make have a huge impact on how quickly you get back to normal, how much it's going to cost, all of those things. And you know, most organisations haven't had a cyber incident, but those that have, you know, are typically surprised by how complex, how challenging, and how expensive it can be to manage. Even the best prepared organisations come away thinking we could have done that better. So I'll finish up, and I'll just ask you to take back to your organisations those two questions that I brought up with you in the first place, and that is, do you have a business continuity plan? Do you have a disaster recovery plan, including your incident response plan to cyber? And have they been tested? I'll hand over to John.
Richard, thank you. Folks, hi. Don't want to create pressure for you, but we got rave reviews in the last session. We've just done the session next door, so the questions, we were bowled over. There was more than we could handle. I'm not trying to make it a competition, but it kind of is. Firstly, a big thank you to Unimutual for having me along today. Congratulations on hosting such a great event, and thanks for such a lovely warm welcome to Adelaide. Richard has done a great job of introducing me. I'm not going to overlabour it, just to let you know that you might have met or you might have spoken to some of my team in the past at Clyde & Co. We're on an exciting journey of moving across the entire team, 65 plus staff, across to a new business called Atmos, which is dedicated to helping businesses who have breaches. That's what we do. We also have a readiness team, so we're there to help you on your readiness journey. We're there to deal with disputes and investigations and all of that comes out of it. But you'll hear more about that very shortly. Today's session, the brief was to talk about incident response, and I'm going to do that, but I'm going to try and keep this very, very relevant to the audience today and to explain what makes breaches in your sector really painful. I'm going to have some asks, but I'm going to give you something as well. So the first ask is, I think we've got a lot of insurance people. I kind of got an eye roll when I was like, who's from risk in the last group? They just all looked at me like I was an idiot, but give me a rough handful of who's in that kind of risk category in the room. Cool. IT, anyone wearing an IT or wearing two hats? We've got some IT people. Yeah, not that many. Legal. Great, I can see multiple hands going up for things. This is great, these are busy people. Anyone with communications, that would manage communications, stakeholder management in the organization? Interesting, that's the same. There was nobody in the other room that was in that group. I'm going to explain to you in a couple of reasons why I've asked that question. The next thing I'm going to ask for is questions throughout. Despite me talking a lot, I can go really quiet for a really long time and make this really awkward. So if you don't ask questions, I will literally stop talking. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. Every question on this topic is really valid, really important, because the subject matter is changing so dramatically every day. And then the last, my give for you in response to you giving me that is, what you all have is the opportunity to spend some time with us today, with the team today, or meet us outside. What we're going to be doing is, if you don't reach out to us post the session, we're going to connect with you. What you've got as part of your protection is time and hours to spend to meet our team, to get to know us. Why do we bother doing that? It's not to sell you something. It's not to try and kind of get you to buy something. It is because our data shows that the clients that we have met before they have the breach, they spend 30% less on the breach. They shorten the life cycle of the breach by around 20%. And ultimately, the brand damage that is caused by the breach is significantly less. Unfortunately, still 8 out of 10 calls that we take on the hotline, I've never spoken to this person before. The team has never met this person. We haven't pre-onboarded them. So we are on a mission to try and change that, because what we experience is that when you call, we have met you before, the trust is already established, the mechanisms of how we're going to work together are established, and we just hit the road running. Whereas you lose time in that first 24, 48 hours if you're trying to, as Richard said, bring a team together, figure out what providers you're going to use. You lose time in that critical period, which when you look back on it after handling the breach, you are going to wish that you had more time in that first 48 hours, because it's the real burn zone for it. So really our commitment to you is to spend as many hours as many of you need to get to know you, to integrate us, to try and be there to support you. There's no cost with any of that either. This is all free under the policy, as is the onboarding service. There's no commitment, there's no upfront piece with it. We're just on a mission to meet many. Richard has done an amazing job of trying to move the dial. We have onboarded a lot of faces in this room, same in the room next door, but we still have got a lot of work to do. So reach out, or we'll drop you an email and we'll come find you. Sorry, that sounded a bit threatening. 3 minutes thing, I find you. Anyway. Okay, why do I look so tired? This is the slide to explain it. 2024, it was a big year. We had a lot of breaches. It was a record year for us in the number of incidents that we handled. If you were to read the papers, if you were to just kind of base your cyber knowledge on Daily Mail and such other valid publications, you would think that there is only one incident type, and it's ransomware. But when you look at the statistics, ransomware at 5 to 6 p.m. on that wheel is making up 17%, so less than a fifth of the breaches. If you combine that with third-party breaches, which is making up 8%, they are breaches not on your own system, but on a vendor that you use, and they've had a system, and 100% of that 8% is ransomware. So we're looking at 25% of the total volume is ransomware. Then you move around to midday to 5 p.m., business email compromise. That is when somebody's in your mailbox, typically lying in wait, trying to get money to go left when it's supposed to go right. That is still an epidemic. Everybody thought that this would go away with the introduction of multi-factor authentication. Guess what the criminals have done? They found workarounds with it. It's like the modern day trip and slip, and I've been using that phrase for 10 years, and I still believe in it. It is more common than people slipping on grapes in supermarkets. That's how many business email compromises we deal with every day of the week. Some organizations come to us and say, somebody's been in 5 mailboxes, 10 mailboxes, 300 mailboxes. And what businesses then, what clicks with business is yes, okay, we might have had a misdirected funds, but then they realize, crap, somebody has synced or taken a full copy of the mailbox. And if you all think about your own mailboxes, what is in there? What's in the subfolders? What have you been keeping of your own information? The data risk around mailbox breaches is often way, way worse than what the criminals have taken in a ransomware event. So those two incident types are making up 60% of the volume, and then there's kind of a splattering of other incident types. Coming back to the theme of readiness, what we say to clients is if you can prepare for ransomware, if you can build your plans, your policies, your procedures, do your simulations on it, you can handle any incident type. The myth that I want to bust is that people think that it's going to be wildly different. Every incident is going to be crazy and wacky and a crazy journey. These incident types are really formulaic. They're quite simple. They follow the same pattern. They're typically financially motivated. So if you do your plans and your policies and you test them in accordance with trying to prep for a ransomware incident, you will be ahead of the pack. On the sectors, you can see that these kind of ebb and flow. If for any of you who've been at our presentations in the past, you'll know they go up and down. Education sector, I think, is sitting at number 9. If I was to recast this for the first 3 months, it would be in the top 3. So we have seen so much ransomware in the sector in the last 3 months. Why is that happening? Because what happens with criminals is they get a successful attack, maybe in the US or the UK or somewhere around the world. There seems to be a good pay rate on that, and they invest their entire business model in rinsing and repeating. So they will start in the US, do the West Coast, do the East Coast, and then as they do in Australia, they'll do the West Coast, and then move to the East Coast. And they literally just replicate the model and go through it until they've done everything, and then they move on. And then a different group picks it up. So it's really, really systematic, this business model, and it's predictable. Yes, please.
Misdirected funds.
Yes.
Socially engineered fraud.
Yeah, great. Great question. Great question. You got it.
Does that misdirected funds 15% include really mean socially engineered fraud?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it is either what we have put into the misdirected funds category is if your own systems haven't been compromised, but you're the victim of it, so you have been duped into paying.
Right.
All of the other ones we have badged into business email compromise because that was the route into the business, and that was compromised. Most of, I would say 30 to 50, 35% of those are financially motivated in that business email compromise category, but it's a huge portion.
So that's the number of incidents.
Yep.
What's the kind of dollars involved with social engineering fraud?
Yeah, wildly different. The sweet spot is roughly kind of the $20,000 to $100,000 because it's easy to get that money in and out of a bank account without it being stopped. It's also easier then to bounce it internationally because to get the money out of reach, you typically have to bounce it 2 times to get it out. Our data we're in a joint task force with the Australian Federal Police that we've been running for the last 3 years. Our data is that if you can contact us, and this applies to your business and it applies to you personally, if this ever happens to you, find our hotline number and call me. If you can call me within 48 hours, our success rate of getting the money back is 94%.
Oh, wow.
If it's a minute past that, it drops to single digits. We have built with the Australian Federal Police a protocol on how to get this back and how they step in and how they do that. And we've had some amazing, heartwarming success stories. We have also seen more heartbreak than I could share with you on this. It is so grim how much money has been taken out of Australia, people's pockets every day of the week, and from businesses who can't withstand it.
Just a quick question for you then, Richard. Richard. Is social engineered fraud covered under the cyber policy, or is it under a crime policy? Crime, not yours. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But typically the response piece will be as part of it, so the root cause and the cost. A belated happy St. Patrick's Day to you.
It's not covered under the cyber.
It's not a clear-cut answer on that.
Okay, let me take you back. We were chatting about ransomware. Let me take you back to the business model of ransomware. So why might any of you decide to go home this evening and go, do you know what, let's give it a crack. Let's go. Let's set ourselves up as a threat actor. I'm going to take you through these graphs. They're a little bit hideous, but bear with me. Bottom left quadrant. What we have here is a declining slope representing the pay rate on ransomware. So back in 2019, the average out of 100 clients that were impacted by ransomware, 82, I think it was, or 85% were paying. Nobody talks about that. It is the most wild statistic. It is like literally everybody was paying. They were impacted and they were paying. If we fast forward to 2024, the pay rate is currently sitting at 25%. Now, if you blend that out across SME, mid-market, big end of town, I still think that the pay rate for big organizations, and I put everybody in this room in this category, is probably above 50% are still paying. SME are being targeted less, so it's kind of a bit of a blend. So again, sitting in the threat actor's shoes, this is your business model. If less people are paying, what do you got to do? Rank up the price. Let's do it. Let's go. Top right quadrant. You can see that the average ransom demand or the negotiated outcome has crept significantly up from roughly 351, tipped over $1 million. It came back down because there was a whole heap of things that I would waste 15 minutes telling you about, but it's starting to climb again. So they're getting paid less frequently. They got to charge more, but they are still willing to do discounts. Is the thing that we're experiencing with them? Typically up to 70%. It's a great sale. It's also an average, exactly. You could experience a lot more. And what I would say is for this group in this sector, without naming anybody, the demands have been significantly higher than that 1.13. They're typically starting with a 3 or 4 or 5. That's our experience with the education sectors. And then everybody understands ransomware, so I'm not going to tell you to suck eggs on that. You know that it's about systems encryption, and then you know that it's about data theft, so they take the data as well to try and double leverage it. The new introduction in the sector is heavy intimidation. The intimidation that we're experiencing with these, it's wild, folks. It's absolutely wild, and it's grubby, and it's gross. It is people contacting your family. It is sending your kids WhatsApps. It's really, really not very nice stuff. It's calling front of the house. There's no limits to what they will do. We had one recently where they had sent to all of the front of house staff, like it was shipped from Eastern Europe, a USB key because they had seen that the client had gotten clean. And they were hoping that one of the house staff would put the USB key in to reinfect the entire system. Like, there's no limits. This was urgent couriered. They spent something like $800 to get it there within 48 hours. The levels they will go to get you are never ending. But the reason I pop this up is because the encryption method is now kind of dwindling away to a certain degree. What the threat actors have realized is it's really super hard work to encrypt it, and then when you pay to fulfill on the promise of helping you decrypt. And what they're also experiencing is that more businesses are paying because they're worried about the data. So there's been this big business model shift to just taking the data, taking more of it, taking it from this system, that system, that system, that system. So that if you're not worried about that, maybe you're worried about that, or maybe you're worried about both of those in combination. So the data leverage point is a big, big tactic. That's not going away anytime soon. But they're doing it now. It's happening. So you're reading the media coverage around, this like $7 million payment, and they impersonated the CEO, and that kind of lulls everybody into a bit of a false sense of security. Say, oh, that happens to banks, or that happens to big, big, big companies. It's in most breaches. It's actually happening. We had one recently where 4 of the people, so the financial controller had followed the process, which was they needed to call the people to authorize the payment. That person got on the call and could see that the CEO called. That's how it operated. The CEO called to validate it. The CEO was impersonated. That mind kind of went, oh, I'm not sure about that. But then there's 3 other colleagues who were also all impersonated on the call, and they validated the payment. We had one recently where they managed to hijack the main telephone number, and what they had done is then kind of called a lot of clients, sending out a voicemail done with an Australian voice recording through AI, and it encouraged them to take active steps on their account to do something. It's just super, it's never ending. Like it will never end. It will adapt quicker than we can respond or to pick this stuff up. Okay, folks, 4 things on this slide. The first is the privacy. Oh, we've got a question? Yeah, please. I asked for questions and then I've been keeping an eye out, sorry.
I just wanted to understand, you were talking before about ransomware and that the data effectively being stolen, but where that's not popping up on the black market, etc., what's the motivations of the threat actors?
Yeah, and there's been some really interesting articles on that in the last fortnight. With every group that we deal with, the major groups, when you call us, when we're helping you with ransomware, what we're trying to do is try and take the guesswork out of it. So what we do is we present you an entire suite of threat intelligence to say, this is how many times we've dealt with the group Akira, and this is what they have done. This is what they have said they would do. This is when they have sent you the decryption key. This is how many times they've defaulted. We've got these really predictable statistics, so it allows you to make decisions based on fact rather than emotion, which is can be problematic on it. And typically, in a lot of instances, as I said, they take the data and they say, if you don't pay, I'm going to dump it. There have been scenarios where the data dump doesn't happen. In other words, they say, you didn't pay, I'm not going to put it online. There's multiple different reasons for that. The first, I would say, is that haven't talked about it yet because I could talk about it for 30 minutes, but you've got a kind of a franchise model that's crept into ransomware. So people kind of typically think that it's one gang, but what has happened is this affiliate model has crept in where any one of you can go home and buy the brand Akira or buy the brand Fuzzy Bear, and you can operate as a threat actor under the master franchise agreement. And these individuals are supposed to adhere to the rules, do what they say they're going to do, and behave like them. But they don't always do that. And can be a little bit of a muddy water as to whether they are in fact kind of sticking to the rules, whether they did take the data, whether they're bluffing, all that type of thing. So that introduces a bit of a kind of instability in the data. Secondly, we're seeing way more groups that we've never encountered before. And they are kind of leading, and there's very little threat intelligence to say what they will do and what they won't do. And sometimes they're bluffing it, and sometimes they don't do that. The third thing that we've encountered is, yes, dumping it will do you brand damage, and it will do worlds for their business model because they're saying what they're going to do, and the next victim kind of sits up and goes, oh my goodness, look, they do what they say they're going to do. In some instances, they just sell it rather than dumping it, because selling it will give them value. They might get paid by somebody who wants it, nation state, pairing it with another data set. But if they dump it and sell it to that person, to another criminal, well, you can kind of imagine how that story ends. It's probably not the most pleasant outcome. So there's some variables, and I could probably give you another 10 with it, but it is happening, yeah. Absolutely. It's also kind of a good way of understanding, I think as we're in this business, people ask, how do you know if somebody paid? It's kind of like, if you spot a red car and then all you can see is red cars. Typically, if there's been an incident and the data hasn't been dumped, one of 2 things has happened. The business has paid, and that's why it hasn't been dumped, or this scenario where there's an unpredictable nature of it. And that's actually giving clients some comfort, because you could be in either of those categories. It doesn't automatically mean that you've paid. That's why it hasn't dumped. Yeah, it's a really good question. Can I keep going? Okay. Oh, we've got another one. Go. Good exercise.
Thanks. I'm new, so I'm sorry if this is a silly question, but do you do much work with public sector institutions where there are government mandates regarding, like, our standard position is that we don't pay ransom?
Oof, I love that question. Yes, absolutely. The government has done a really impressive job in kind of vocalizing their view on what they think should happen. And I think that contributes to the massive decline of Australian organisations paying it. But there still are organisations paying it. Claire O'Neill was obviously beating the drum very loudly. Maybe it's a little bit less prominent in recent times. But the government, through the introduction of, which is my second point, the proposed mandatory reporting regime, which will come into place very, very shortly. The idea behind that is that if you pay, or you are in the chain that pays, me or somebody else that's involved in it, we have to tell the government within a prescribed period that we've paid. We also have to hand over a copy of the transcript of the dialogue with the threat actor, confirm the payment. If you don't do it, there's a penalty. The idea behind that is to share intelligence with the Australian Cybersecurity Centre so they're better informed to protect the next victim, the next victim, the next victim. But make absolutely no mistake of this, it is a deterrent. And they're saying it very clearly. They're saying you're less likely to pay it if you got to tell us that we're going to pay it. I'm less convinced by that, because realistically, a lot of the organizations we're working with particularly in this group, the government has been asking for the last 10 years, and most businesses kind of end up saying, yeah, we did. And the reason they end up saying we did is because the government knows. The government's tracked the payment. The government knew the minute it left the bank that it was paid. Like, they watch every single payment that is leaving the country around this, so they know. So it's not going to shift the dial that dramatically. There's not going to be a public register on it. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see if it actually does change the behavior on it. But what I would say is the government, when they come in, if the National Coordination Team, who our government relations team would help manage in a breach, they will advocate for you not to, but they will respectfully understand that it is an organizational or a business decision. It's not kind of like absolutely screaming at you, don't pay. That's the practical reality of it. It's a really good question, well done. Is it tax deductible? It doesn't tend to be tax deductible, but it is like the crazy world of what I work in. Sometimes you're like, it's being paid, and then it's like, holy crap, where are we going to put this in the accounts? And then, as you remember, it is a reimbursement under your policy, and that's every insurance policy in the market. You got to pay it, and then you got to claim it back, and there's a process to that, and that's why we're involved. We're experts in getting you the money back ASAP, because it has happened once in my career where we paid an organization that's a criminal gang on a Monday. They were non-sanctioned. Woke up the next morning, they were sanctioned. And your insurer, that is considered to be a sanctioned payment. If that's part of a sanctioned process, if they were to reimburse you, you got to avoid that. That's obviously an obvious one to try and avoid. I'll tell you more about that if somebody buys me a drink later. Okay, so introduction of mandatory reporting, it's going to be an issue. Smoke signals from the regulator, from our federal regulator. I just want to flag that the new laws that came in under the Privacy Act, there's penalties in there for kind of medium and small infringements. And Carly Kind, who's the federal commissioner, she is super serious about this. State legislation has kind of rolled in across Australia as well for mandatory reporting. They're not joking anymore about this. They have told you that you have had a really long time to consider this. They are really, really focused on, why are you holding so much data? Why do you hold it for so long? Why do you need it? Are you using it for the purpose that you had it? When you've got a breach, what are you telling people? Does your privacy notice look nice? Like, there's a million things that they're going to start chasing businesses, and they are doing it already. Like, we've seen a massive uptick since January in the amount of enforcement activity. And then the last thing I wanted to flag was defensive incident response. So as you all know, if anyone, actually, can I ask a question? If we've got brave candidates, because we've got a good response to this. It captures current job, past job, any job you've been involved in. Has anybody been involved in incident response? Had an incident been involved? Getting some hands, yeah. Cool. You will know that typically when you've got an incident, you're focused on the response. You're focused on just kind of getting it done, getting through it. Unfortunately, the new world we're in at the moment is that there's two halves to the breach. It's why it happened, how it could have avoided, and you get judged on that, but you're getting judged now on your response. So the steps that you take, the pitfalls that you fell into, the way you communicated, whether you over-communicated, whether you under-communicated, you're getting critiqued on the response. So you've got to make sure that your response is not just good for good's sake to get you through it. It's actually defensible at a later point in time, because regulators, consumers, everybody are now nitpicking at your response. So you end up having two problems, the breach itself and your response to the breach. And this is why the response piece is so absolutely critical. Our role as first response managers, Richard has covered this already, I'm not going to dwell on it. We are baked into your policy. I just want to make this totally clear. We act for you. We don't act for your insurer. We're literally the person there to guide you through the incident. We handle around 1,000 to 1,200 breaches every year, with a full panel of experts that they're probably the ones that your team want to use in any event. And the idea is that you come to us, we bring you the knowledge that we gain across all of these breaches to make your response as efficient as it possibly can be. If you call the hotline, this is the process that it'll follow. But really, as I said earlier on, we want to engage with you beforehand. We want to meet your teams. We want to spend some time. We want to iron this out so everybody understands what the process is and how we can support you. This is a wheel for a reason. You'll see that what we've captured here are all of the kind of first response or the incident response work streams. They're the most involved work streams. And the reason that we represent it on a wheel is because they all link to each other and come back around and never stop during incident response. Every one of them feeds the other, every one of them has a touch point, every one of them relies on another work stream for incident response. People typically think cyber incident, they think tech finish, or tech solution. The tech work stream is probably the one that I lose the least amount of sleep about, because that team kind of know what to do, they kickstart in, they've got the vendors. The heaviest lifting, so I asked the question earlier on, in incident response is communications. So you can run the breach impeccably from a technical perspective, tick every box from a legal and regulatory. If your comms are crappy, people think you did a crappy job on the response. That's just as simple as it is. You get judged on the comms alone. So starting to weave the comms in, starting to understand it, starting to pre-plan it, make sure it fits with your legal and regulatory. You understand, how are we going to help you stand up a call center? How are we going to get 30,000 emails out? What's the second round of email? What's the fourth round of email? It has to be like machine-like, and that's why organizations come to us, because we can just roll out a machine to help you within your own system, or if you can't do it yourself, take a provider off the panel who will do that and roll out that comms plan for you. To be frank, even if you're notifying 100 people, it's complex, it's difficult, it's hard. The legal and regulatory piece is constantly changing. I've given a bit of a pitch around the threat intelligence piece. Never do that on your own. That's what I would say. It is the worst. And my favorite story ever is when we got brought into a breach later, and they were like, oh, you better pick up this threat actor negotiation work stream. I was like, cool, I'll have a look at it. And then just like the two people going at each other, there's somebody from IT and the threat actor just like literally like taking lumps out of each other. And my favorite line in the thread was, we don't even care about the data anyway, the business. This person from IT was like, I don't even care about it, it's crappy data. That was on Twitter within 24 hours. And then that organization got a kicking from all of his clients. So it just kind of shows that this is specialist. This work stream is really difficult to manage. We brought in-house a team of crisis comms. So we've got 5 people in the team that do government relations, crisis comms, help you with every component of it. It's all that they do. It's literally their specialism is cyber comms. They're to supplement your team, cover under the policy for it. They're there to help you work with your team, work with your existing agency, external agency. We're super flexible. We can do everything in this wheel. We can do one thing, whatever it is that you want. Yeah. Okay. Education sector. Why are breaches in this sector a little bit painful? And this might be, I hope I'm not putting kind of finger in a wound for anybody on this one, but I'm going to call it out, I'm going to say it. Every breach that we have done in the education sector, decisions are painful. And you all probably work in sector, this might be me telling you things that you already know. There are multiple layers. There's a complex structure. There is, when something needs to go out the door, it has to pass many hands on a day-to-day basis. You all know this. I'm telling you things you know. I can see the nodding. Imagine having, so that's like one decision in one day. Can you imagine 50 decisions in one day, and those decisions were supposed to be made 3 days ago? And guess what's waiting the next day? Another 50, and another 50, and 150, and 2. It's that level of intensity. And essentially what I'm trying to say is, if you haven't operationalized or made that process efficient, what it results in is automatic brand damage. It results in you being slow on your comms having to be a bit of a balancing act. You're kind of not getting the note right. You're kind of being a bit protective, defensive. You're over-communicating, you're under-communicating. You're not meeting your regulatory obligations. Your response not moving quickly enough. What we do is we do a lot of tabletops. We've done tabletops with some people in this room. The goal with the tabletop is to experience it, but also just try and figure out, hey, how can you get from there to there as quickly as you possibly can with a good sound decision, with a good governance framework around it. If you haven't, to Richard's point, tested the plan, rehearsed the plan, what you're going to do is, it's Pareto the rule, you're going to spend 80% of your time on trying to familiarize yourself with the process, and 20% on doing the things that matter, like good comms and polishing it and making it look great. If you haven't tested it, or if you have tested it, 20% will be the process, and you'll spend 80% of your time on making it look good and the things that actually matter. And if that isn't kind of incentive, I don't know what is. Communication strategy, I've touched on it. Government relations. When you all have a breach, you will be contacted by the government. Just, that's a blanket rule for everyone in this, whether you're private, whether it's government funded, you will be. There's no doubt, I 100% guarantee it. You will get the knock, because the perception will be that this is going to have an impact on people on the street. In other words, what the government call consequence management, and they're going to want to understand what the consequence is. Do you have a management plan in place for it? And if you don't, they will step in to manage it for you, which is not always what you want to do, but you will want to collaborate with them. So government relations in these breaches is super important. It's top of the list of the communication strategy. And then the last one is affected individuals. You all know this. Brand damage from these breaches, it's significant, it's lasting. There is some fatigue, so people are a bit eye roll, shrug, move on from it. But what we're seeing is compensation culture has crept in. So I know there's a lot of chat about class actions, and people kind of think that's a big end of town problem. We've got a team that just manage compensation claims on breaches. That's all that they do, is just manage compensation claims on every single breach. Somebody's asking for $100, $15,000, $20,000. There's a whole range of stuff happening. So what we're saying is there is a tail risk. There's now a compensation piece in the mix.